Well, we said we'd come right back, and we are back. And there is Odon are puffing away at his pipe as he is relaxing, lighting it up, and getting another good salient. What is it you have there? Rose tobacco that I can smell it all the way over here. Oh, it smells good.
No, it's a good blend, a French blend, amphora.
Amphora, French blend. Listen, give us a quick review of what you've just said. Let's go back and give it to you, Odon. You've done a great help. Thanks so much for coming on board. And thanks for redoing this one, because we lost the first copy of this. It's much better now the second time around. Maybe we'll lose this one and do a third time around to get it, embellish it even more. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Hello, everyone. What we saw in the first part of the presentation was a bit like you just said, Jay. The hard evidence we get from the 7th century, from the coins, from the inscriptions, contradicts the standard Islamic narrative. But moreover, it tells us another story. Something else happened. And we just saw that there were some very, very difficult times, and it all relates to the expectation that the Messiah will come, that the end of times is very near, the apocalypse is about to begin, and the Messiah will establish God's kingdom on earth, God's kingdoms of justice. And I think the historical Muhammad, maybe Umar, if he existed, were trying to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem in order to have Jesus come back. But he did not come back. And the Arab rulers kept on expecting him to come back. But the further they waited, and the grander their deception. Jesus did not come back, but since they had the power, they kind of thought, hey, let's make this kingdom of justice by ourselves. And we see this in the coins. In the coins, we see that the rulers pretended to rule at first in the name of God, then in the name of God, and also as intermediaries between God and man, which are very messianic claims. We saw that a coin with Muhammad on it, which cannot be an Islamic coin because it is a Christian coin. So maybe Muhammad was Jesus or was a messianic figure. And we saw with Abdallah ibn al-Zubayr something, I think, very important, maybe a tipping point in Islam's history, one of many tipping points. It is the first time that we see Muhammad Rasulullah written on something. It's the first time that we see it on a coin from 685, non-Islamic coin, a coin from Persia, minted according to the Persian Empire pattern, minted by an Arab ruler who wrote Muhammad Rasulullah. And we saw that this phrase at this time, during the 7th century, cannot be understood as the Prophet Muhammad is God's apostle, because we have nothing else to back this. There is nothing outside of this coin to explain us what Muhammad Rasulullah. Or is it? I think we have something outside of this coin to explain it. And we went back to the Bible and we found that Muhammad Rasulullah in Aramaic is the very acclamation that was used when Jesus entered Jerusalem, and here the Jewish crowd shouted, "Blessed is he who is sent by God." And in Aramaic, it is almost the same as Muhammad Rasulullah, which means that Abdallah ibn al-Zubayr, when he wrote Muhammad Rasulullah on his coins, he kind of identified himself with Jesus, and he claimed to be the new Muhammad, the new Jesus. And he came to be God's apostle himself, and he was to establish God's kingdom. And it was this claim that fueled his claim to power. He opposed at the time the Umayyad power. The Umayyad power in Damascus, in Syria. And he waged war against the Umayyads, and he lost. He lost to Abd al Malik. And what Abd al Malik did was, at first, having him defeated, having him crucified and so on. And also what he did was to gather, he tried to gather every coin of Abdallah ibn al-Zubayr, mentioning Muhammad Rasulullah. And he had them melted to make his own coins, and also to try to erase Abdallah ibn al-Zubayr's memory. But what we see is that here, with one of the first coins that Abd al Malik minted, he took for himself the phrase Muhammad Rasulullah. You see, instead of inventing something new, and I think this is Abd al Malik's genius here, he took everything from himself, for himself. He claimed to be the Muhammad instead of Abdallah ibn al-Zubayr. He claimed to be the Rasulullah, the one sent by God, instead of Abdallah ibn al-Zubayr, because he defeated him. And he took for himself also to be the servant of God, the commander of the believers, and he took the Bismillah for him also, as we see here on this false, that was this Umayyad false, this copper coin, which was minted by Abd al Malik between 690 and 696. We see use the Bismillah again, in the name of God here. There is no God but God, God alone. And may the one said, my God, be desired. And on the obverse here, we see Abd al Malik himself, the standing caliph, with the hand on his sword, his sheathed sword, about to unsheath his sword and to wage war, and claiming to be the servant of God and the commander of the believers. What we can get also from this coin is that it is still a Byzantine Empire pattern coin. There is no more Christian symbols, no more crosses, no more emperor figure. The emperor figure has been replaced by Abd al Malik himself. So it is a very aggressive statement against the Byzantine Empire. And we see that here we have something very strange. Instead of the traditional Byzantine cross, we have a pole, a staff with a sort of round thing around it. We don't know for sure what it is. Is it the black stone? Is it something? We don't know. We don't know, but for sure it is not a Christian cross. And again, when you put all this together, it is a very aggressive posture, a very aggressive statement against the Byzantine Empire. We saw that.
May I just interrupt? That obverse symbol that you're just talking about, is it not a mockery of the cross itself? Because it has the pedestals as if it's the Byzantine cross, but it has the circle replacing the cross itself. Would that be a kind of a mockery against Justinian II?
I think so. I was about to make a sort of a relation between this coin and the one Muawiyah minted. You remember the gold coin that Muawiyah minted at the end of his reign to pay tribute to the Byzantine Empire. And Muawiyah started the mockery. He started to mock the Christian symbols, and he retrieved the cross and replaced it with something else, a staff and a bar. And here, the interesting point here is maybe the evolution between Muawiyah's coin. Let me just show it to you. Muawiyah's coin here with the staff and something that is not a cross. And with Abd al Malik, we have something in the shape of a sphere. And in other coins, in later coins from Abd al Malik, we will see also this sphere. Here it's very, very crude. It's a sort of symbol. And one hypothesis would be that this could be a depiction of the black stone. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe it's just a mockery. Okay. But it worked very well as a mockery because the Byzantine emperor at the time started to realize that Abd al Malik was an opponent and a strong one. And this will be even more clearer with Abd al Malik's inscriptions and other later coins. Here, I want to have a look at some of the inscriptions on copper plaques on the Dome of the Rock, which are attributed, the inscriptions, to Abd al Malik. Abd al Malik built the Dome of the Rock around the year 692. We don't know for sure whether it's the starting of the building or the end of the building, 692. But the Dome of the Rock is something very particular. At the time, there was, instead of the Dome of the Rock, on the Temple Mount, there was a very crudely built temple that one Frankish bishop who did a pilgrimage in Jerusalem and in all of the Holy Land saw, and he described in 670 a large house made with beams, large beams, quadrangular house which could house thousands of worshippers. So there was a construction here. It was the third temple built here on the Temple Mount. And when Abd al Malik decided to destroy it, to have it erased and to build something else, it was a statement in itself, a statement about Abd al Malik being now in charge, having control over Jerusalem, and so having control over the Christians and the Jews. And this is written in the inscriptions. And there is something else. The Temple Mount and the Jerusalem place was supposed to be, in the very early 7th century and the very early Islamic tradition, the place of the apocalypse, the place where Jesus was to come back, where the nation were to be gathered in the Kidron Valley, so just outside of the temple, and the judgment day, the judgment of the nation should have happened there. When Abd al Malik built its dome here, he said to the world, there will be no apocalypse. Jesus will not come back. There is nothing about the return of Jesus in the Dome of the Rock inscriptions. So he tells us that the waiting for the Messiah is over. Something else is happening. He, Abd al Malik, takes charge, and he will begin the Messianic times. This is a very, very strong symbol and statement that we can get from the very building of the Dome of the Rock. But from its inscriptions, especially those in the inside of the Dome of the Rock, which dates from the Abd al Malik from the 7th century, we can get some information about what Muhammad meant exactly. And this is very, very interesting. Here on this plaque, I have just written here an excerpt. It's not the whole writing. We can read, "We ask you, O God, to bless the Muhammad, your servant, your prophet, or your envoy, exactly, and to accept his intercession with you for his people." So who is this Muhammad here? Is he the prophet of Islam? Or is he, I think, Abd al Malik himself? You see that Muhammad is the servant of God. This is exactly what Abd al Malik wrote on his own coins. "I am the servant of God and the commander of the believers." We see also that Abd al Malik, I think, wrote that he was himself God's envoy, God's prophet, sort of. Here, the translation is not very good because it's Rasul. Rasul is sent, the one who is sent, not prophet per se. Prophet in Arabic is Nabi. Nabi, it's another word. And here also we see that the Muhammad, which is described here, is well and alive at the time, because the people, the one who read, can understand that he is interceding to God, interceding to God for his people. So it means that he is alive. The Prophet of Islam, according to the standard Islamic narrative, died in 632. How could a dead man intercede to God? How could he have an intercession with God? Mm-hmm. In the standard Islamic narrative, in Islam's theology, when you're dead, you're supposed to be either in hell or in paradise. And there you don't have any contacts with God. You cannot have an intercession with him. The only intercession we know of is the intercession of living people who pray to God. And this is what is described here. So it means that the Muhammad that is described is a living man who claims to be the servant of God and the envoy of God. I think it is Abd al Malik who is described here. And we can see this also in another inscription in the Dome of the Rock, another copper plate. Here it is the one at the northern entrance inside of the Dome of the Rock, which says, "Muhammad is the servant of God and his messenger, whom he sent with the guidance and the religion of truth, that he may make it conqueror of all religion." And we saw in the previous presentation that the word Muhammad was not to be understood at the time as a name, but as a participle. So the right translation maybe is here, "May the servant of God," or "May the servant of God and his envoy be desired, be worshipped, whom he sent with the guidance and the religion of truth, that he may make it conqueror of all religion." And I think, again, that it relates to Abd al Malik. He is the one who claims to be the conqueror of all religion. This is what the Dome of the Rock is about. I am in charge. I am the new boss, the boss of Christians, the boss of Jews. I am the conqueror of all religion. When you put together all those inscriptions, you get the picture of what Abd al Malik pretended to be. He pretended to be the coveted one, the desired one, the worshipped one, the servant of God, the one who interceded to God, with God, as being an intermediary between God and man, a servant of God, a commander of the believers, and he had a mission. God sent him with the mission of conquering all of religion. So we see here that Abd al Malik is not any Arab ruler. There is something very, very new and very big with Abd al Malik. We see here that Byzantine emperor might have been right to fear him, and he will be making aggressive statements to the Byzantine emperor. Here we have another de-Christianized and mockery coin minted by Abd al Malik. It's 692, the very year of the building of the Dome of the Rock. It's kind of the same coin that the one Muawiyah minted in 678. It is a copy of a Byzantine gold coin that was minted to pay tribute to the Byzantine empire and emperor. And the mockery here was too big. It was too big a mockery for the Byzantine emperor to let go.
Slightly, he could not dismiss it. He had to react.
He could not dismiss, exactly. And this led to a war. The Byzantine emperor refused this coinage and engaged in a war with Abd al Malik, and he lost. This was all the more a mockery that Abd al Malik here, on the reverse of the coin, still retrieved the cross and replaced it with a staff and a sphere. But he also wrote, in the name of God, there is no God but one God, so no Jesus. May the one sent by God be desired. I am the one sent by God. So this is not only an aggressive statement, but also a sort of, there is a continuity with the copper plate inscription we saw. Abd al Malik here claims to be the conqueror of all religion. And with sending those coins to the Byzantine emperor, he tells him that he will conquer his religion, hence he will conquer his empire. We have also another thing to bear in mind is that the Byzantine Empire at this time in 692 changed. A new emperor came to the throne, Justinian II, and we will see that he had different views about Christianity, about his own religion, than his predecessor, and that might have been a reason why he came to war, he waged war to Abd al Malik. We will see this here, exactly. Here it's another coin minted by Abd al Malik. We have on the obverse, the reverse, excuse me, here, almost the same image and than the previous coin. We have, it is still an imitation of the Byzantine empire pattern, but still no cross, and instead a staff with a sphere here. And we have also on the obverse the inscription, Bismillah, Bismillah, la ilaha illallah, wa ardu Muhammad Rasulullah. In the name of God, there is no God but one God. May the one sent by God be worshipped, desired. You could also translate, may the one sent by God be desired, as a very assertive phrase, such as, worship the one sent by God. I command you to worship the one sent by God. I command you to worship me, the standing caliph with a hand on a sword. Otherwise, I will unsheath the sword and you will see what happened. Still, what we see here, and this is something to underline, this is still a Byzantine Empire pattern, even though there are no more Christian symbols, and the Byzantine Empire figure has been replaced by Abd al Malik. And I told you that things might have changed with the coming to power of Justinian II. He came to power in 692. And I think his predecessors, at least the three, up until the three previous emperors before Justinian II, had not the same orthodox view on religion as Justinian II. His predecessor they had a sort of soft touch for the monophysites. So the one who believed that Jesus was not the Son of God, or that he was not part of the Holy Trinity. And this could help to explain the good relationships between the first Arab rulers and the Byzantine Empire. But with Justinian II, we have a very orthodox emperor who wants to enforce a very orthodox vision of Christianity. And he tells the Byzantine world so by minting this solidus, this gold coin here. You might see here that we have the standing emperor figure with the cross in his hand, which is a traditional Byzantine Empire pattern. But on the reverse of the obverse, on the obverse of the coin, we have the figure of a Christ Pantocrator, a Christ Almighty, which is in direct opposition to what Abd al Malik pretends to be. And so here we have the clash. There is a clash between the new ruler, the new Arab ruler, and the Byzantine emperor. So there was a war, as we just told, and the Byzantine emperor lost, which led Abd al Malik to be the unchallenged ruler of the Middle East. And here we have something very, very new, because by defeating the Byzantine Empire, he was able to start anew, to build his own empire. And this is what his next coin will show us. The next coins, and you will see that those are coins that are minted within a year or two of each other. So things are evolving very, very fast. In 692, he was building the Dome of the Rock, writing these inscriptions, minting his first coins. The former coin was from 694. And here we have a coin from this year, 694, 695, which is very, very interesting. It is still a sort of Persian Empire pattern coin. We still have the Zoroastrian symbolism, but we have something here. We have the Muhammad Rasulullah phrase, may the one sent by God be desired, in the name of God also. But here we have also the Amir al-Muminin, I am the commander of the believers. And here we have something new. Something new and something very interesting. Here, Abd al Malik, which is depicted here with as a standing caliph figure and the hand of his with the hand on the sword. Here, Abd al Malik says, "I am Khalifat Allah," which means lieutenant of God. I am the caliph of God. This is the first time we see the word caliph on a coin. And what does it mean to be Khalifat Allah, lieutenant of God? It means that his power is divine, and his new empire is the new kingdom of God. He rules in the name of God, but moreover, what he does, the territory on which his rule applies is the territory where God's law is abided by. So, by claiming he is Khalifat Allah, God's caliph, he creates the caliphate. The caliphate being God's kingdom on earth. So this is something new. We did not find this on the previous coins from Umayyad, from Abdallah ibn al-Zubair, and even less in the very early coins that we saw. This is something very, very, very new. We can also gather something from the juxtaposition of the Persian emperor figure here, traditional Persian emperor figure with the likes of Khosrow II on one side of the coin, and on the other side, the real ruler. We have here the caliph himself with the hand on his sword. Here, this is something very symbolic. This is the power of ancient Persia. Here we have the new ruler, the new boss in town. We have another coin almost almost during the same time, which is even more interesting. It is still Persian Empire pattern with Zoroastrian symbolism. There is the Arabic phrase Bismillah la ilaha illallah wa ahdu Muhammad Rasulullah, the same as before. In the name of God, there is no God but God unique. May the one sent by God be desired. But here we also find the same phrases as before. Amir al-Muminin, commander of the believer, Khalifat Allah, lieutenant of God. And at the center here, we do not have the standing caliph figure. We might see him here instead, in the place of the traditional Persian emperor figure, because look at this here. We see that he is holding his sword. He has his hands on his sword, ready to unsheath his sword, a bit like the standing caliph figure. So it might be Abd al Malik himself here, and not the effigy of Khosrow II. And here in the middle, we have something a bit odd. It's a sort of an arch with a lance. See here the shaft, the end of a spear, not a lance, a spear. So another symbol of power, another very aggressive symbol. And we have a unique expression here, Nasrallah, God's help, which reminds us of the Quran itself. In the Quran, there is this surah, a very short surah, Surah 110, about Nasr Allah, God's help. When God's help comes and the victory, and you see the people entering into the religion of God in crowds, glorify your Lord with praise and ask forgiveness from him. Surely he turns in forgiveness. This is one of the very last surahs, a very apocalyptic surah. It tells us about the end of time. The end of time will be when God's help have come, and the victory will be here for God's religion. This is what Abd al Malik claims. I am God's help. I am myself God's help. By creating the caliphate, the victory has been achieved. We are victorious. And let's begin a new era. So in a sense, the end of times have come. The apocalypse is now, but it's not an apocalypse of destruction. It's an apocalypse of building a new kingdom, God's kingdom on earth. And this is what Abd al Malik pretends. So something very, very strong here. And we see that it is not only in the East that Abd al Malik pretends to be Khalifat Allah, but also in the West, as we find numerous coins, other coins in the West, with the Byzantine Empire pattern, also claiming that he is Amir al-Mu'minin, commander of the believer, and Khalifat Allah. I have found some, but I'm sure there are many, many, many others. And then came the reform, not the reformation or reform, the coinage reform of the great coinage reform of Abd al Malik, which is a sort of continuation of what he did with his empire patterns coins. He is starting something new, a new empire with an original empire. So he needs a new coinage, new symbolic for his power. He cannot rely, he cannot keep on using the Byzantine Empire pattern and the Persian Empire patterns. So he creates something new with those coins. That this coin in particular was minted in between 697, 698. And this is a very political and religious coin at the same time. In the center of the obverse, we see La ilaha illallah, no divinity other than Allah wahdahu, God unique. La sharik lahu, he has no partner, which is direct attack towards the Christian faith, toward the Trinity. In the margin, may the messenger of God be worshipped, be desired, who sent him with guidance and the religion of truth, so that it may triumph over all other religions, which is almost the exact same phrase as the one we saw in the Dome of the Rock inscriptions on the copper plates. It is also something that we will find in the Quranic text, in Surah 9. On the reverse side, at the center, God is one, God is eternal, he has not begotten, nor was it begotten, which is, again, an attack on the Christian faith in the Holy Trinity. And some technical information about the coin, because a coin has also to be useful with a date and a value. In the name of God, this dinar was minted in the year 78. So here we have a new original pattern for a new original empire. This is the very symbolic of this coin. We have, we see that Abd al Malik got rid of the Byzantine and Persian patterns, and that he is now using Islamic or pre-Islamic, because is it Islam yet, symbols. I don't think this is Islam yet, because I think the one who is described as being the Muhammad is not the Prophet Muhammad, but Abd al Malik himself. You see, this is because this makes sense with all the evidence we just saw with the Dome of the Rock, with the other coins. So I think there is no Prophet Muhammad yet, but only a very powerful figure, the new caliph, and his new empire. And we can also get it from inscriptions. This is one of the very first, I think maybe the first epigraphic inscription to mention Muhammad. Maybe there is a tombstone in Egypt also. But as an epigraphic inscription, It is almost the very first one. This was at the time when I discovered it. Oh, I was not the one who discovered the inscription in the on the Isma Plateau, 200 kilometers from Petra. It is a team of Muslim researchers, modern days Indiana Jones, sort of, who are looking for those kind of inscription, and they found this one, which is almost the same as the Dome of the Rock inscription. O God, bless the Muhammad and accept his intercession in his community, and have mercy on us and hereafter. And we can get a date because there is a signature. Bakr bin Abi Bakr al-Aslami wrote at the end of the year 80, which means that this inscription can be dated between 699 and 700. So under the rule of Abd al Malik. And here again, we see that the Muhammad is someone who is interceding with God. So he is alive and well. He is a living person. He's not a dead prophet from 70 years ago. It cannot be. It must be a living person. So I think this relates to, again, to Abd al Malik being the Muhammad, being the one who is to be desired, who is to be worshipped. And so here we have something very interesting to put in our graph. Abd al Malik takes for himself all the claims that his predecessor made to power in the name of God, intermediary between God and man as being servant of God and commander of the believers. He identified himself with the Messiah as a Muhammad and as God's envoy or apostle. But he had something new. He is the caliph of God. And we will see that his successors will keep on this title, will keep on being caliphs of God, ruling over the caliphate, ruling over God's new kingdom on earth, God's new kingdom of justice. But here we have opened a new era, and we will see no more coins with Christian and Zoroastrian symbolics and empire patterns, former empire patterns. We will only have coins with inscriptions such as the one we just saw, with pre-Islamic or Islamic symbolism. But it does not mean that the standing caliph legacy has disappeared. We do not see coins with the standing caliph on it, with the hand on his sword, but we see other depiction of the standing caliph figure. For example, with this statue, which date from 740, 750. Mel already showed it on your channel, Jay.
Yeah.
And I think I was the one who sent the photo to him. But I don't know whether I got it from me or somebody else.
Thank you Thank you.
And so this is a statue of, we think, the Caliph Walid II, one of the last Umayyads before the Abbasid revolution, before the war between the Umayyads and the Abbasids. This is a statue that has been found in one of his palaces. It might have been sculpted a bit before, but we can say for sure that he had this statue in his palace, either to remember that he was Abd al Malik's successor, the standing caliph successor, but also to tell the world or to tell the people that were coming in his palace that he himself was kind of, he was like the standing caliph, he was the standing caliph, and he also had Abd al Malik powers. Yes, so it's reminiscent of the Abd al Malik coins. And just as an element of context, this is a coin which was minted by Walid II. We see here that we are in the Abd al Malik coinage reformations pattern. The Arabic script has a bit changed. It's more of a Kufic script now. On the Abd al Malik's coin, it was much more of a Hijazi script. Hijazi script meaning a northern script. It's not a script from the Hijaz. But it's almost exactly the same phrases and the same inscription. So with Abd al Malik's successors, there were successors of Abd al Malik, meaning successors of the Muhammad, and they claim their power from Abd al Malik's claim itself. And they added a layer of claim, another one. They ruled as caliphs of God and as Abd al Malik's successors. So one could ask now, what happened when the Umayyads, when the successor of Abd al Malik, lost the war against the Abbasid, and how did the Abbasid justify their power at the time? Because they themselves, the Abbasids, they wanted to be God's caliph. They wanted to rule over the caliphate, the caliphate. But they could not claim to be the successors of Muhammad, the successor of Abd al Malik. They needed another justification for their claim. And what we see with the Abbasid is that they used the phrase Khalifat Rasulullah instead of Khalifat Allah. So they add another layer of justification. They claim to get their power from the Prophet Muhammad himself. And this is something very understandable. They conquered God's kingdom on earth, but they could not claim, they could not justify their powers by the very founder of God's kingdom on earth. So they had to invent a direct divine justification, which means that someone in the past must have given a sort of revelation that the caliphs were the ones to rule over God's kingdom on earth. So this is the invention of Muhammad's prophetism, Muhammad's revelation, and the replacement of the claim of Caliph of God and successor of Abd al Malik by another claim. We are successor of the Prophet Muhammad. And this is also the replacement of the identification with the Messiah as Muhammad and as God envoy, with another claim, Muhammad is sent from God. And so the phrase Muhammad Rasulullah now gets a new meaning. It does not mean may the one sent by God be worshipped or desired. The Abbasid will impose a new narrative. They will impose Muhammad as a name and not as a participle. And so the meaning of the phrase changes, drifts, and become Muhammad is sent from God. God has sent Muhammad. Muhammad Rasulullah becomes the Islamic part of the Islamic Shahada. And this is from there that the standard Islamic narrative is created, is tested, and it will take centuries up until the 9th, the 10th, and even after, it will take centuries to form a narrative that is coherent that is kind of logical. It's not that logical, but it has its own logic. And that justifies the power of the Abbasids. And here we have also, I have something to add about the Ali and the Alids, the partisan of Ali, who became the Shiites. When the Abbasid fought the Umayyads, they formed a sort of a coalition made of Arabs, led by the Abbasids, made of Persians also, especially the Persians that were not within Abd al Malik's empire, and made of Alids, Shiites. They were not Shiites at the time. But in 750, when the Abbasid coalition won, part of this coalition was made of Alids, which means that the Alids and the Abbasid ruled together the caliphate, which means that the Shiite standard narrative was not created until the end of this coalition in the 10th or 11th century. And this is something very, very interesting because every scholar, every historian knows that the Alids were part of the Abbasid coalition, but they do not draw conclusion from this. The conclusion that there was no real difference between Sunnis and Shiites up until the 10th and 11th century, which explains why the Shiites and the Sunnis have a large common core of traditions and why they share the same Quranic text. It's because it was made by both of them. I think the Shiites were kind of an inside movement in the Abbasid administration. The Arabs, the Abbasid took charge of the military, the administration, and so on. And the Shiite took charge of the religious aspects of the construction. When I say Shiite here, beware, it was not all of the Shiites, not all of the Alids, because some Alids did not take part in the Abbasid coalition, and they formed the Seveners movement, the one that created thereafter the Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt. So it was not all of the Alids that were in the Abbasid coalition. And here we have, with this graph, I think, an explanation of the process that created Islam, the very long political, theological, and religious process that created Islam. We see how layers after layers the Arab leaders built Islam by claiming messianic powers up until there was a ruler that was stronger, really, really stronger than the others, Abd al Malik, who claimed to be the Messiah himself and to establish God's kingdom instead of the Messiah. And thereafter, with the Abbasids, there was the memories were erased. You see, with Abd al Malik, we have something new, but it still relates to the Jewish and Christian expectations of the 7th century. It still relates to the expectation that the Messiah will come and he will establish God's justice, God's kingdom on earth. With the Abbasid, there is no more Jewish and Christian remnants in the religion. It's all new, but it's all based on those former expectations. this is what I have here in my conclusion. As we just saw, Islam emerged from a long political and religious process, a process that is deeply rooted in some Jewish and especially Nazarene Jewish, Judeo-Nazarene, and ex-Christian apocalyptical expectations. There was a plan to trigger the end of times, to have Jesus come back and have him establish God's political reign on earth, the Amr Allah. But the plan failed, and Jesus did not come back, and the Arab rulers kept on waiting on his return as they gradually took on his clothes, his Messiah's clothes, to inaugurate the new messianic times. By claiming to establish God's political reign on earth, they in fact no longer needed Jesus to come back, and they found other justification for their power by inventing the Islamic revelation, and thus the prophetism of Muhammad. And so the caliphs, starting from Abd al Malik, slowly replaced Jesus. The figure of the eschatological Jesus, the Jesus of the end of time, has thus been postponed by the Islamic narrative to another end of times. It could not be completely removed because of the socio-cultural collective memory, compares the eschatological tradition, which still transmit the former expectation of Jesus' imminent descent in the 7th century, the very tradition that are in some hadiths. And furthermore, Jesus is still useful for the standard Islamic narrative because Jesus' return has been used as a sort of reinforcement of Islam's main hope and goal. Should the Muslims fail to establish God's political reign on earth by themselves, they can rest assured they will achieve it anyway at the end of times, when Jesus himself will come back, will take command of the Muslim armies with the Mahdi, will conquer the world, slay the Antichrist, the Al-Masih ad-Dajjal, and be the judges of all mankind. And so one could say that deep inside, Muhammad's religion, Islam, is actually and still Jesus' religion.
Okay, thanks so much. Well, listen, you've actually taken off an awful lot. You've put an enormous amount of material into these episodes. The first one that we did from around 640 up to 685 with the coins. This I've asked you to do the coins, ending with Zubair bringing in the name Muhammad, and then this episode where you then start with Abd al Malik in 692, 693, going up to 696, and then moving on up to the statue and down up to the Abbasids. And I thought it's interesting what you have done. You have kind of shown by looking at the coins that if you follow on, if you just look at the coins without putting any overlay or trying to interpret the coins, just looking and seeing what the coins say, it's very clear that they're, first of all, they're not Islamic, and that there's nothing Islamic about them. They really do reflect the powers that be that still control them. And the powers that be in the West would be the Byzantine. So they tend to be Christian in nature. And the powers that be over here are still, although the Sassanids are no longer in power, like the Byzantines are over here, it's still that memory, that Zoroastrian memory. And of course, it's still giving lip service to that memory. And so you have the Zoroastrian coins with the fire altars. And then as you get to this episode, we're now moving into Abd al Malik. Abd al Malik is very important. He lives up there in Damascus. He's way up here in Syria, right next to the Byzantines. I mean, the Byzantine Empire is just above him. If you look on a map, I'll show you the map right here. Look how close it is. So his biggest concern is the Byzantines. Politically speaking, they're his biggest concern, and also theologically speaking. And so it stands to reason that he doesn't want to continue to pay tribute. They've been paying tribute now for 30 years, since the time of Muawiya, and he's fed up with this. And so he then introduces that very damaging coin that's very similar to the one the one that Muawiya had introduced earlier, 30 years earlier. And he introduces this coin, which is a mockery of the Byzantines. It no longer has the crosses on it. And it introduces this phrase, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, the Shahada. This is the Shahada that we know today. What's fascinating is we today, the way we look at the Shahada today, that we have interpreted it is the way the Muslims have told us to interpret it, because today's reference is Muhammad, the prophet of God, or the helper of God. But Muhammad is the person name. That's how everybody interprets that. And that's been the big problem that all these numismatists have had looking at that coin. You're saying, hold on. No. The name Muhammad is, if you need to put it in the context of the 7th century, and you need to put it in that context, it's very clear that this is the praised one, but what? Or the beloved of Allah. This is the beloved of God. And of course, this could be Abd al Malik himself. He is the beloved of God. Because now that, and I love what you've done, you've taken and you've shown what was happening, not only religiously, but politically. These Arabs were, now that they had been thrown off the mantle of the Sassanids, and the Persians have been thrown off the back, they now were in charge. And though they were vassal states of the Byzantines in the West and still have that memory in the East of the Zoroastrians, they were waiting for Jesus' return. He didn't return. So what do? Well, as you interpret it, they start saying, well, let me take that place. Let me start, since Jesus is not here to fulfill his return, I'm going to take on that messianic figure. And that's why then they refer to themselves as the blessed one. Zubair does that on his coins there in Iraq. And now Abdul does that. Abd al Malik does that there in Syria on his coin with the one that really mocks. I'm now the blessed one of God. You're no longer the blessed one of God. I'm the blessed one of God. This is a mockery against you. He mocks Jesus. The backside. Yeah, go ahead.
You saw the coin of Justinian II, who put the Christ Pantocrator on his coin, and you saw what Abd al Malik made in his place. The Muhammad was the Christ Pantocrator for Justinian II.
Yeah.
And he, Abd al Malik, was the Muhammad in his new kingdom.
Okay, and so there's the mockery, and it's the comeback to what Justinian II, who also came to power. Well, he came to power in 692. Abd al Malik had been in power since 685, so he had already been in power for 7 years. He introduces this coin as tribute to the Byzantines. It was refused by Justinian II. He is very orthodox in his beliefs. He then goes to war against Abd al Malik and loses. And so as a result of that, Abd al Malik now then introduces this brand new coin. Most people have this coin. I'll just show it right here. This is the coin we're talking about with the sword. And now he is the lieutenant of God. He is the caliphate of God. He now has taken out he becomes the successor of Muhammad. And you kind of did what you did. You kind of showed 3 different reference points. One is that you mentioned is Muhammad sent from God, the Zubair it kind of takes on. Abd al Malik upped the antes and says, no, he is the successor of Muhammad. And then you go and do a very interesting thing. You then show that Abd al Malik then throws off the images and now just puts script in there. And in the script on those coins from 696 on, all the script is attacking the Byzantine, but it's attacking the person of Jesus Christ. It's attacking, and it's very similar to the same inscriptions we have in the Dome of the Rock, which are all confronting his divinity, the Trinity, and his sonship, those 3 areas. And then he says, I'm going to be the conqueror. So it's me again. It's really putting him. He is not only a messianic figure, but he is now the conqueror of all religions. And this now is introduced in 696. Then you jump to and you show the inscription. You showed the 2 inscriptions that come after that and the statue that comes later on. But what I thought was fascinating is that you then jump to the Abbasids, and you showed that the Abbasids have taken it one step further. They now look at it as the successor of the Prophet Muhammad. Who is this successor? He is the Prophet Muhammad. So they make him into a person, a man who becomes the prophet, because they need a prophetic line. They need to be in that prophetic line. They're not like they don't have a prophetic line like the Jews and Christians have. They want something that they have. They want what they have, and they also don't have a revelation. And that's why this. If you notice, as the coins are showing this, the books are starting to appear. The Qurans are starting to appear. The manuscripts are starting to appear about the same period. And in the Abbasid period, then we have a whole proliferation of the manuscripts, many different Qurans. So it stands to reason that the coins would then parallel what we're seeing in the manuscript, the evidence. Fascinating stuff. Coins are great because they don't disintegrate, they don't deteriorate. They tell a story, and the story they're telling confronts the standard Islamic narrative in almost every point. And what you've done here, you've shown that the standard Islamic narrative has the wrong people at the wrong place, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, in the wrong languages, and also in many cases, pointing to the wrong characters. And that's why it's so good that the coins from that time period redirect that and recorrect it, and also give us a much better narrative, a narrative that was actually happening. And what the narrative that I'm hearing from you is very political and religious simultaneously. It's a political narrative.
Things were mixed at the time.
All the time, yeah. So the two were happening simultaneously. And it's a confrontation of the Byzantines, primarily because they're the big superpower of the day. They need to be confronted. So it's confronting the Byzantines, and it's also confronting their theology, which would be, of course, Orthodox.
There is much more to say on a political level. You see, when Abd al Malik introduced his new coinage, the coinage with the Arabic inscriptions, this was a new pattern for a new empire, because there was a new empire, and it was a very original empire. It was an empire made of the western part, the formerly Byzantine part, and the Persian part. And here I want to pay homage to Robert Hoyland, who wrote it in his book In God's Path. He had a very interesting reflection. He said that the Islamic empire was really created by Abd al Malik. And because it was an original empire made from a Byzantine part and a Persian part, it was something that was never swallowed by the Persian influence in the East, nor by the Byzantine influence in the West. You see, for example, at the fall of the Roman Empire, in the Western world, in Europe, you had, for example, the Franks, the Frankish conqueror who came from Germany and invaded the northern part of France, and they established a kingdom there. It could have been a German kingdom. It could have remained so, but it was swallowed by the cultural influence of Rome. Even though Rome was collapsing, was crumbling, its influence was still strong enough to absorb, to take into its influence the new Frankish kingdom. And so this Frankish kingdom became Roman Frankish, and it became France thereafter. But here in the Middle East, when the Byzantine influence was stronger, the Persian influence was like was catching on, and vice versa. When the Persian influence became stronger, the Byzantine influence was still there to prevent the new empire from becoming Persian. And so an original formula was made, which explains why Islam endured. Islam could not have endured within an only Persian territory or an only Byzantine territory. It needed those two influences kind of fighting each other to create something new. This is what Hoyland explains masterly in his book. And it is, I think, very, very relevant to explain why Islam began as a religion of an empire and why it endured, because the empire endured.
Well, this is all stuff for grist. This is stuff for everybody to now listen to. You've seen the whole panoply of what Odon has done with these coins from 640 all the way up to 749 and later. Thanks so much, Odon. I'm sure we're going to get some response from people. We'll be putting this up. We have a few other videos to put up before this.
I'm waiting for it.
And when we go and see it, Odon has promised he's waiting for your responses. He will respond. And there's, Odon, you have been also collecting Q&As that we need to do some response to the Q&As.
Exactly.
We promised we would do that, and we'll get to it. But bear with us. All of these episodes were lost. Almost 10 episodes were lost in the ether, and we've had to redo this. In some ways, it's much better. I much prefer redoing it. It takes time and effort and energy, I know, and I'm sorry for that, Odon, but you've done a great job of putting these coins in a chronological order. And the graph you've done, folks, take that graph. You've seen it there. Grab it on your screenshot and then print it off and then keep it so you can use it to help
download it from my website.
Or you can go up to his website, and here's his website right here. We'll just put his website here.
TheGreatSecretOfIslam.com.
There it is, TheGreatSecretOfIslam.com. It's right down below. Pull it down. He's giving you permission to take down his PowerPoint so that you can use it in your own ministry and in your own discussions and with your own debates. Debate with us. Discuss with us. We want to hear what you have to say in the comments.
Please debate. I don't pretend to be right on everything. I think I got the big picture. But debate, correct me. Debate can only improve our vision.
Yeah.
And I'm all for debates.
This is called peer review, and we need you as our peers to help us out, to show us where we're wrong or where we're right, or where we need to improve, and where we need to look. Maybe we're missing something. Help us out with this. That's why we're here. That's why you're there. And that's why we can use YouTube as a vehicle to do just that. God bless you. This has been great. Thanks, Odon, for coming again and
Thank you, Jay. Thank you a lot.
This is Odon in France, and this is Jay here in the United States, 3,000 miles apart. Yet looks like we're right next door, doesn't it? God bless you. We'll see you later, Odon. See you all. This is Jay and Odon. Over and out.